Supernatural Season 15, Episode 6, Golden Time. So, of course, it's been forever since I've done a review. I finally caught up on the episodes. I'm fully caught up. I actually recently watched the mid-season premiere as well. So I'm going to be shooting through these reviews, so apologies if I skip over some specific details. I'll probably get more detailed as I get closer to the most recent episode. But this was a good one. This was a really interesting one, even. We have the return of a character. First off, Eileen returning, that's super cool. The fact that they succeed in the end is even cooler. Because this episode was just it starts off, here's yet another person who was one of the good guys, and then she also went to hell. And then it's well, if you go to hell, one of the rules established, if you go to hell, you can no longer go to heaven. So, what do we do? So I thought it was really cool that they were actually able to succeed in this episode where they're able to officially bring her back to life. And I thought it was a cool idea where they're one of the witches, she specifically says we can't both use it because once you find a way to, once you find a loophole past death, she kind of closes that loop. So I was well, that's kind of cool. A nice little nod to Billy there, specifically saying she. And I was okay. It's an interesting episode. We get to see Sam kind of do his normal Sam thing where he's a good guy. And so we have, the first witch that goes in. Turns out the place is hexed. So she ends up dying off. And then it's the mother and the youngest daughter left. And Sam's okay, you guys kind of got me. I can help you get out of this, though. Your sister did some really effed up stuff. She just was tortured by her sister. And Sam does the normal thing that he does where he's kind of the good guy. It's look, you led a pretty effed up life. But you can leave. You can escape what your family, is. And I thought that was cool. I was all right, that's a normal Sam thing. He's going to try to help her out. I figured it was going to be kind of the normal flow. He would say that stuff. It wouldn't work at first. And then, of course, by the end, it would work. And she would turn on her mom. She would help them. She'd be one of the witches that they would let live because it's you don't have to just suffer and do bad things. You can be a good person and, still have your powers. So I kind of thought that's how it was going to play out. And it did not. That's one of the things with this season that I think has been most entertaining, where they kind of show some of the generic stuff that we've seen them do, probably, millions of times. That's kind of a character trait of Sam, is to try to do something good, even when it comes to a monster. They have those rare circumstances where both Sam and Dean agree, but for the most part, Sam's the one that's kind of that character. And so in this one, I was all right, he's doing his thing. You have this girl who's tortured. She still has the wound from when her sister turned her tongue into a snake, which is insane. I was all right, if any time it would work, this is the time. She was literally tortured by her sister. She didn't really care that much that she died. It was just she was a horrible person to me. And that was pretty much it. And I was all right, this is totally going to work. So, Sam and Eileen go on this case, Ghost Eileen at this point. And so they're gone for a while. Of course, they end up being captured. And so initially, Dean was kind of just staying home. And so, of course, he joins the fray because it's my brother's been gone a little bit too long. I need to see what's up. So they go through the motions. They end up killing the youngest daughter. And I was oh, she's dead. She just dies. And that was just it. She was just gone. And then they burnt the body of the other, the oldest sister, because she came back as a ghost to actually fight against Eileen, which was actually really, really cool. But Eileen was losing. And I was thinking, well, if they killed her there, she would just end up going to the darkness because she would be a spirit that was dead, a supernatural being that died. And I was that's interesting. We've never had a full-on ghost fight. It was, it wasn't just they waved their hands and they did this and that. It was they were fighting and Eileen was dying again because she was, I guess, being choked to death. But as a ghost, you wouldn't think that would really be the same thing. But it was, apparently. That's canon now because she was being choked to death. Double death. I don't know. And so they had to burn the body. So they burned the body of the oldest sister. She's dead. Dean just shoots the youngest daughter in the stomach. So she gets killed. And then Sam, in a pretty cool turn of events, he actually uses a spell to kill the final witch. So I thought that was actually pretty awesome. I was I did not see that one coming. So that was a really interesting twist. And I don't know if they're going to lean into that a little bit. It's the final season. But still, I feel like that's something that would be pretty cool to lean into, where he does kind of learn a couple spells here and there. That'd be pretty sick. I mean, technically, they use magic all the time. They've the exorcism, I count that as a spell. That's a spell. He's done a reverse exorcism, stuff like that. So they've used spells before. They say things that are technically spells, and they use, sigils and things like that to trap demons or trap angels. So that's all magic. That's all spells. But in this case, it was kind of just a full-on spell. He put the bag in her mouth, and he said some stuff and, killed her. And I was that takes it to a slightly different level. So that was pretty cool. But it just didn't go as I anticipated. I thought, like I said, it would kind of go the normal route that we might expect. And instead, it was just, nope, they all died, and they're the bad guys, and that's it. Eileen was brought back to life, and it was like, that's a great victory. You know, the heroes won, the villains lost, and they just died, and that was it. And I was like, huh. In one regard, it's like, yeah, they were the bad guys, but in another regard, it did kind of suck because they go through this really effed up story of this young girl who was just tortured by her sister in, you know, in magical ways. Like, I think she said she turned her first boyfriend into a balloon and popped him. Just for what? What purpose? What purpose could you possibly have to do something like that? Or turn your sister's tongue into a snake that bites its way out of her mouth, or, you know, at least tries to. So it's just like, that's nuts. That's wild. And then she just died. It was like she was just in it. Dean was like, I don't care about that. You know, he doesn't know any backstory. Boom, you're dead, because she was holding the thing to, you know, mess with Sam. So it was like, take her down. She can't, you know, twist his arms and stuff and slow him down. And then Sam killed the mom, and they burnt the body of the older sister. So it's just like, dead. They just died. They were trying to get some stuff for Rowena's place, and that was it. They just died, and then the heroes won, and Eileen comes back to life. And I was like, huh, that's a heck of a story, because it did not go the way I was expecting it to. I figured they'd win, of course, and I was kind of surprised. I was really surprised by the fact that junk worked, because how often do they really get to just bring people back to life? That was a really cool twist there. So they needed the victory, without a doubt, with everything that's gone on and finding out Chuck is back and stuff like that. So they certainly needed that victory. It's very cool to have Eileen back. So very interesting side of the story. And then, of course, the other half, also fairly simple, probably even simpler than, you know, Sam and Dean's side, and that's Cass. We get to see Cass kind of just doing his thing. He's out and about, and he stumbles upon this case where a lot of people seem to go missing, and we find out later it's because of a djinn, and it's actually like the sheriff of the town or whatever. And I was like, oh, well, I kind of didn't see that coming. He just seemed like a generic normal dude, and I figured something would kind of happen. And as they're going along, it's just like, well, they find the woman's son. He actually survived, and then the sheriff kind of comes out and Cass takes him down. Boom, he's dead too. But the interesting thing there was the way Cass killed him, because he could have just, boom, he knocked the gun out of his hand. All he had to do was just stab him, and it was over. Instead, he threw him to the ground, and he did like a slasher murder where he was just repeatedly stabbing him in the chest. And it was really interesting. I was like, that's oddly dark for Cass's character. Like, where he's at now is very interesting. And I like the way it was handled, because it was like, okay, you know, especially considering typically when they do that sort of thing, it's like, oh, you know, flash of light, it's an angel or a demon, just boom, and they're dead. But it's a djinn who, you know, supernatural, but not in the same flashy sort of way as angels and demons. So it wasn't, you know, a beam of light coming out. It was just blood. And so it wasn't like as mystical, I guess is the best way to really put it. It felt more human, and he was just hacking away at this dude. And I was like, clearly he's dead after that first one. He got him in the chest. He went, you know, from front to back. The spears are fairly long. He killed him. He was dead in that first stab, for sure. And he just kept doing it. And then, you know, blood's getting on him and stuff. And I was like, that was oddly dark for Cass. Like, we've seen evil Cass where he's, like, you know, controlled by Leviathans. He's got Leviathans in him and stuff like that. But this was just, like, a different, darker version of his character. And I was like, let's see where this goes, because that was interesting. But like I said, that was super simple. That was like insanely simple. They went super old school too. I loved it where, you know, it's like, you know, how do I know you're actually with the FBI? It's like, all right, well, here's this number. And they went mega old school with all the phones that have, you know, names and stuff taped to them. I was like, man, we haven't seen that like since original Bobby. So that was actually super awesome. I love that scene. But all in all, it was a really entertaining episode. Like I said, the way they kind of did some of the, you know, flips of the normal story. For Cass, I'd say it was fairly simple. There's tons of times where it's like the first person they talk to, whoever's in charge, is actually the bad guy. So that wasn't much of a twist. I think that was more just to be like, Cass is going through some stuff, you know, having left, and then trying to figure out, like, you know, what does he do? And then by the end, it's like, I have to get back into the fray. Like, I can't just step away. I have to be back. I have to fight the fight, because it's the end game type fight. So I thought that was cool, and it was, like I said, it was very simple for his side. And then the other side technically was kind of simple, because it was good guys win, bad guys lose, but the good guys really won. They brought someone back to life, and like I said, they needed that victory. So it was a really cool way to end the episode out. But yeah, still an interesting little twist there with them kind of going the route of like, hey, this is what's happening with this, you know, like the youngest daughter. And then it doesn't matter. Like, she doesn't get to have redemption. She doesn't get to live a better life. She just dies because she's in the fray and she's in the fight. And that's it. She's dead, and they go on. and they move on. And it's like, it's kind of funny watching it, because it's like, for me, it's like, even though I've watched the show since the beginning, it's still just like, you see random characters come along, and it's like, oh man, it sucks that happened. But for Sam and Dean actually having to fight these monsters and fight demons, when they all die, he didn't bat an eye. He didn't say anything like, oh man, it sucks, I would have liked to save that girl. There was no scene like that. It was like, well, they're dead, let's see what we do with Eileen. And they saved her, and that was it. And it was like, yeah, that makes sense. They aren't watching their lives, they're living it. And so it was just interesting having that moment where it's like, he didn't have to reflect. He didn't even really have time. They got too much stuff going on for him to be like, I really wanted to save that little girl, or this young woman. No time for all that crap. It was like, she died, she's dead, and that was it. And then they saved Eileen, and it was just like, huh, this is interesting. This is definitely an interesting episode. And they've been, like I said, they've been doing a good job with that, where they're just flipping things around, like this little moment here, little moment there, and we see stuff that we're familiar with, and then it's like, no time for that, and it just moves on. But it was a really good episode. Amazing to see Eileen come back. Amazing that they were even able to actually pull that off, because I was probably not the most hopeful based on this season, but it was really cool. So I was definitely glad with that, and we'll see what happens. With Sam and Eileen, they clearly tease, like, even when she first comes up, it's like, obviously they were kind of teasing it there, that something may or may not happen between them. So we'll have to just wait and see. But certainly enjoyed this one. Of course, we'd love to know what you guys thought about it, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, your least favorite parts about it, and I would love to know what you guys thought about Eileen's return. Did you see that one coming? This being the final season, I expect them to have just like every single person, but that I just don't see that really being possible, where they have every single person come back. So it probably won't. So I was kind of surprised to see Eileen come back. Admittedly, I didn't really remember Eileen. Like, I don't even remember what season she's from. I think it's been quite a while since she's been in the show. But that's kind of the thing for most people. But I just didn't remember Eileen until they kind of talked about it. And I was like, oh, I do remember her now. I do remember her. So it had been a minute, and I'm horrible with names, so I definitely didn't remember her name. I was like, she looks slightly familiar, but I'm just like, yeah, I don't really know who that is. And I was like, oh, okay, I remember who she is now. Of course, very unique considering that she's deaf. So obviously, once I remember that part, I was like, oh, okay, it's all coming back, because she's the only person that's been deaf in the show. So very unique, and it's pretty cool. But we'll see what happens. Like I said, we'd love to know your thoughts on the episode and Eileen's return. But in general, want to know what you guys thought about this one. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.